The lesson we're going to be doing today is the GPM vendor payment tracking. So once the outside super emails the inside super that batches of approved invoices are done, you can find those in shared/reports/2012 reports/invoice approval. And you can be sure that the outside super has completed those files and looked them over if the word done is at the end of the file name for the batch of invoices. So once the inside super opens that approved invoice batch with the words done at the end of it from the outside super, they're going to notice that the outside super has stamped it with these approved stamps, and that means it's ready for payment. So we're simply going to look at these line numbers. So you'll notice it says number 11, so we're going to look for that line number 11 on the GPM, and it should be the same. So since this invoice is on line number 11, what happens with this contract amount of $2,100 is now that it says amount due $2,100, we're going to put that into the GPM. One of the key points on this GPM to use it correctly is we got to make sure we're on the correct tab, because if you're not on the right tab, you're probably not putting the numbers in the right place. So check those tabs. As of now, I'm on the GPM tab, so I want to switch over to that paid tab. So now that we're sure that we're on that correct tab, I'm on the paid tab, I can go ahead and make that amount due entry. So it's really important to make sure that we're entering those amount due on the paid tab, not the GPM. So make sure you're clicking that paid tab. And once I've entered that 2100 into column H, the draw number 1, you'll notice that the dollar difference goes to 0. That's in column G. It goes to a $0 difference because we've paid the full amount. And I want to also show you guys over on the GPM what happens once you put those numbers in. So I'm going to click back over to that GPM tab, and now in the GPM you can see that that $2,100 has popped itself into the OS paid column, column I, on the GPM. So that lets you know that we've paid that $2,100, and in column J the dollar difference is at 0 as well. So we don't owe any more on that vendor. So when you make that single draw payment, it's always going to be right here in this draw number 1 for a single payment. So you're not going to ever need to go to these draw 2, draw 3, or any of those other draw payments if it's just that one single payment. And all a single draw payment really means is that the amount due equals the contract amount. So it's paying the amount in full. So you'll know for the single draws, it's just that one full payment amount. So once the inside super has entered the invoice amount from this spec into the paid tab, they're going to mark it with this received stamp, and that's going to let everybody know that it's already been entered into the GPM. Alright, so now we're going to go over a double draw for one of these specs. Many vendors like drywall, heating, plumbing, electrical, they normally do more than one draw. So for an example of multiple draws, I'm going to use this contract amount, or this spec here, and the contract amount is actually $18,700, but the amount due at this time is $15,700. So we'll go over how to put in these multiple draws. And this is only going to be the first of 2 payments for this specific spec. So just like the other invoices, we're matching this to the line number that it goes to. In this case, it's going to be 32. So we'll go ahead and put the first draw in there of $15,700. And once that amount has been entered into the draw, you'll notice that it shows that we've paid $15,700 in the OS paid column, and the dollar difference still owed is $3,000 in that column G. So we've actually got the second invoice from this plumber as well, and we're going to be going over how to go about that. So for the second plumbing spec and invoice approval, you'll notice the contract amount stays the same, $18,700. it shows our previous payment on there of $15,700. So that amount was already paid, and the final amount due is the balance of $3,000. So when entering it into that paid tab in the GPM, we're going to simply use that line number 32 again for this spec, for this plumber, and we're going to enter that 3,000 in this draw number 2. Alright, and I've got the correct line number 32, and I'm going to put in this 3,000 here in draw number 2, and I'll show you guys what happens. So now you can see that that OS paid column matches the $18,700 that the total contract amount was, and that leaves us with a $0 difference, and that's where we want to be at because it means we paid them off. So now I'm going over what would happen in a situation where we had multiple specs that were separate and were on the same line numbers. So they'd be on this line number 83. So even though they're separate specs, if they have that line number 83, that's where it's going to be applied. So there could be multiple specs applied to the same line number. So again, we're matching these line numbers. It's line number 83. And what you want to do is move the PM budget amount over into the OS bid cost. It's very critical to do this because it's going to help the GPM or the spreadsheet function properly when we're doing these multiple draws. So just remember, when you've got multiple draws and you're not positive what that OS bid amount is going to be, we're going to just be safe and move that PM budget amount into the OS bid amount column. And that's when we have multiple specs with multiple draws. So the first spec invoice that we're going to be looking at is for demo, and it's line number 83. That contract amount is $300 and the amount due is $300. So we're going to go ahead and put that in the paid draw. So in the case of this first spec, we see it's line number 83. It's for the framing cleanup, and it is $300 is the amount due. So we're going to go ahead and put in that $300. And we put that $300 into the first draw tab on line number 83 next to that 650. And once that is done, we can see that the OS has paid $300, and that leaves us with $350 left to use for that line item. So we've got a second spec on this cleanup, and it's also line item number 83. So that's for another $300, and we'll go ahead and enter that in the second draw on line item 83. So this draw is going to be for the drywall cleanup. So now I've added that second $300 draw. You'll notice in the OS paid it's at $600, and we've got a whopping $50 left for that OS amount. So we've got another spec for this that's at line number 83, and it's for cleanup as well, and it's another $300. So we're going to enter that in there. So once I've entered that third draw of $300, you're going to notice I'm over budget by $250. So that means the OS paid $900 out. Even though we have overpaid in this example, the example was really to just explain how to set these separate draws when there's multiple specs for them. So it was a good example to show you guys how to put in these 3 separate draws for one OS bid amount on the same line item. So these larger companies that send us invoices use purchase orders, and they don't like to use our specs, so we've given up on trying to get them to use our specs. So on these purchase orders, what we're going to do is, like I did in this red box, we're going to put the job code and put the line number that this invoice goes on. after the job code. So for example, it's the job code dot structure dot 8. So 8 is the line number that this particular invoice goes on. So we're going to come over here to line number 8 and do a couple things once we're here. So the first thing we're going to do is add the vendor name, which isn't in there because the project manager or the outside super weren't sure who was going to deliver the portable toilet. So next we're going to do what we did in that previous example, and we're going to take that PM budget and transfer that amount over to the OS bid cost. So we're going to transfer that 167.04 over to the OS bid column in column H. And again, the reason for that is that we're going to have multiple payments with multiple specs, and we're not sure how much it is going to cost. So you can see the first invoice for this line item number for the portable toilet is $70.28. That gives us a difference left of $96.76 that is to be owed. So it shows here also in column F, the paid is $70.28. And these portable toilets are billed monthly on average, so we could have it for, I don't know, about 4 months. And if we did, and it was the same cost every month, so we had 4 draws for it, we'd actually be over that OS bid cost of $167.04 by what's in the parentheses right here in column G. The $114.08 is what we would be over. So now I'm going to go over a situation where the amount due exceeds the OS bid cost. So in this case, the OS bid cost is $7,239.18, but the amount due was $8,400. So we're in the red, $1,160.82, and you can see the OS paid that $8,400. But there is a problem here, so I'll show you guys what to do. So if it's an overpayment problem, the inside super has to stamp the invoice with a not approved stamp and write a little note in there that says take action and why it is not approved. The IS must then call and email the outside super to verify if the payment is correct or if it is an overpayment. Then the outside super works out with the vendor and adds notes whether it's approved or not approved stamp explaining the overpayment, and the outside super then calls and emails the inside super to let them know that they have stamped and written those notes about the spec. So as I said a minute ago, when the amount due exceeds the PM budget, we're going to have the inside super stamp this not approved. They're going to need to call the super and let them know it's not approved, and email them as well and let them know that the payments do not match. So they're going to need to put this little note over here as well with the not approved stamp and email it all back to the super and let them know that they have emailed them the invoice. So let's say the outside super got this not approved invoice back, and they actually were meaning to approve it because the vendor did extra work. They need to put an approved stamp and write a note that he did extra work and to pay the invoice amount. And in the case of the outside super getting a not approved stamp back from the inside super on these specs, if they are not approving it and the vendor is actually overbilling and the outside super puts a not approved stamp, they need to just be sure to write a note, it was billed incorrectly. They will email a revised invoice to you, and that's how you solve the problem if they are overcharging. Alright, so now we're to the print and upload sequence of this procedure, and that all happens once the inside super has stamped the invoice approval batches with received and entered them into the paid amounts. So once the inside super has actually marked all those invoice batches approved or received, they're going to need to print this batch of invoices out as a PDF and save it with the letters ISD at the end, which stands for Inside Super Done. When printing a document as a PDF, you simply print it the same way. You're going to go to File, Print, and then in this printer you choose Adobe PDF. So you're not actually printing to any devices, you're just printing a Adobe PDF document that can't be changed. So it's just a permanent document. So once it's been printed as a PDF and the letters ISD have been added to the end of the file name, they're going to upload it straight to where it came from. That shared reports, 2012 reports, and invoice approval, and we're all set. The last thing you need to do is email the bookkeeper and let them know that all the invoices have been approved and they're ready for her.